Fuck the polar bear as a model design? Lastly, there has been a technical test for a brand new Sonic mobile game. One filled with hopes, as the leaked cast seems to include forgotten characters from the Archie, Dick, and Sonic X branch of the series. As it is a test, the product I'm about to review is unfinished, but promising as it has gone through multiple evolutions already. We're talking about Sonic Blitz, people. For info, this game is only available in the Philippines and Brazil. How do we have the game? First, we have the UI. The missions you can complete. Some of them require to use certain cards or deal a certain amount of damage. For each mission you complete, you get a token. With 4 tokens, you can open a small pack of cards. With every 5 tokens, up until 25 tokens, you open a small resource pack. The last one, being the 25 token, you get a big resource pack. By the way, these missions only last for the entire week, so you better get them done. And it's through missions that update, like not really update, but they stay in the game for like the entire week. But if you complete them, they'll be refreshed with more missions every 2 to 3 hours. The content in the card depends. On release, you only get cards in general. Now, you can get restore rings and gold in addition to that. Okay, slight little correction there. It's only the mission card packs. In the season pass, you only get cards. But in the missions, they give you other resources. For those who are wondering, gold are this game's equivalent to Sonic Dash's rings. So basically the currency where you spend everything on. And when star rings, well, it's a game with your microtransaction. When the game will officially release with microtransactions. As for the resource pack, you can get red star rings, star coins, gold, visual, upgradable coins. There are multiple types of star coins, from 2-star to 4-star coins. Actually, it's up to 6 stars, but I only have coins at maximum 4 stars. A little clarification there. Additionally, there are 2 types of missions. Normal missions, which gives 40, I guess, points for the battle pass, which, yeah, there's a battle pass. For the moment, it's just like a generic Blitz pass, where you can get Blaze, but as time will go on, they'll probably give us more rewards and stuff, so that'll be great. When the game will officially release, of course. And the epic missions, which gives 230 points. Usually for a step in the battle pass, you need like 250 points, so the epic missions guarantee you rewards for the battle pass, whilst the normal missions you need to rack up like a few of them. There are up to 6 missions per day that are available for, well, an entire week, which also applies to your tokens we have. So when the week will be over, your token count will be reset to 0. Now the missions are fine. They're nothing too tedious, but nothing ultra fulfilling. It's just there to get currency, to get the game done, to help the player in advancing through the experience, the game. There's a shop too, but it's pretty bare bones since it is a test, since you can only like buy restore rings and like buy card packs. There's also a ring journey, which is pretty much a trophy world with rings that are collected from upgrades and battles, all used as a progression method to claim various rewards. The ring journey tends to get occasional extensions due to the game's unfinished state, so in about like usually every month they tend to give like more steps to they add more steps to the ring journey, and you do that by, well, collecting more rings. Finally, there's the recently added collection, where you get an overview of your card collection as well as albums, books where you can claim rewards by having a specific set of characters at specific stars. So we have albums like the Metal Mayhem album or the Hedgehog Havoc album. The Metal Mayhem album, you need Metal Sonic, the Heavy Shinobi, Grounder, Caterkiller, and Motorbug. So you pretty much need all of the bandits that are currently available in this game. Once for the Hedgehog Havoc album, you need Sonic, Amy, Shadow, and Silver. So pretty much all of the hedgehogs that are currently in this game. Shadow is not obtainable yet, so you can like obtain that album. But Sonic, you need to get him at 3, not 4 stars, I think. Also, in the case of Amy, you need to get him at 3 stars, and for Silver, I think it's also 3 stars. By the way, little reference for Hedgehog Havoc, it is a reference to the Archie comics, which is one of the story arcs that happened during the entire Skirt Saga, so that's a fun reference. Then, we'll get to the cards. We upgrade characters by spending gold and star coins. Otherwise, you get more rings with just gold. You can also use visual upgradable coins to improve on the card's artwork. Additionally, you can look at the character's ability and descriptions. Some descriptions are interesting, like Mighty's, Ray's, and Dr. Fukuroko's. Like for Mighty and Ray, it pretty much confirmed the canonization of Knuckles Chaotix because they specifically mentioned that they have like a special relationship with Knuckles, which I think is that's a pretty cool thing that they say. And for Dr. Fukurokov, they actually have like an actual character, like an actual personality to the guy, because I think he's one that doesn't like to get his hands dirty. He likes building stuff, but he doesn't like to get there and get stuff done. Unlike Eggman and Tails, pretty much, which is pretty interesting because I don't think he speaks or does really anything in the game that he's in. So, yeah. And who's Dr. Fukuoka, you may ask? He's from Still Adventure. What, you didn't know that this game was a thing? Then you're probably not a real fan. Like, do you even know, like, my boy, Norman, from Sonic Watch Adventure? You know what's the funniest part about this? I actually didn't know who Norman was before, like, he was mentioned in the leaks. Because, yes, he's one of the lead characters in the game. A character I literally did not know about, like, literally. Anyways, a cool detail about these cards is that they have their own logo, despite the fact that it looks amateurish. It's cool that they took the effort to make a general Sonic logo for every character. Kind of like the logo for the brand, but like every single character. I don't think this will actually be used for, like, actual merch. Like, I'm pretty sure for the Shadow Hedgehog logo, for example. I don't think they'll use the Shadow 05 logo, which I'm very surprised they didn't actually use this one, but oh well. Finally, we get to battles. To explain how this game works, you get 2 lanes, where you can put up to 4 cards each. You can dash on either lane, where the characters on that lane charge for the force field to deal damage. And that's thanks to the yellow strategy, which pretty much describes your damage output. The heart, of course, stands for health. And with each turn, you get 1 more energy. So turn 1 you have 1 energy, turn 2 2 energy, turn 3 3 energy, turn 4 4 energy, and all that stuff. And you spend energy by drawing a card onto the lane. If the card's energy is lower than the amount that you possess. You can also have multiple cards. If you got 6 energy and you want to use like 2 cards that are 3 energy, you can do that. There's also a modifier to spice up the gameplay, so that could always be fun. Especially for certain characters. There are certain characters that benefit a lot from certain modifiers. Also, if 2 cards from opposing sides are on the same lane, they'll face each other, and by just fighting, pretty much. And the bulkiest and strongest card stays on the lane, while the other one may be kicked out if itself is depleted. And 2 cards can be knocked out if both of them are dead. If both health is at least at 0. There's a limit of 8 turns, so you gotta be quick. The amount of rings and points depend on whether or not you won. If you lose, you get 2 points, actually 3 points, and about 30 rings. If you win, you get 5 points, like 100 rings or something, 80 or 100 rings. So, it's not really a fixed amount, it really depends. When this game was initially released, the game lacked depth as most characters were very, very simple. Either it's like stat buffs, or it's somewhat interesting, but the meta wasn't complex enough to take advantage of his abilities. Like, Marine could get like 3 more attacks if you put on the wide lane, but I mean at the time, I wasn't really a way for that condition to really be a condition. It was more or less, for lucky she had 5 attack, but they just added an extra step. So, it wasn't really all that interesting, really. And the same thing was applied to when she gets attack or she didn't dash, when she wasn't dashing on lane. Because of the lack of complexity, she pretty much had like a certain stat, but they just added extra steps anyone else like dashed onto the lane. So there wasn't simply enough complex characters where the role and setup wasn't really easy. Now though, with the implementation of characters like Sir Galahad and Tangle, yes, she's in the game, and a little cool detail that they added is that for the origin for like each card, and what I really like about Tingle is that they add the issue that she's implemented in. They didn't just say she's in the IEW comics. They said specifically the issue that she's in. So when we'll see Mimic, you won't be like IEW Sonic the Hedgehog. It'll be like IEW Sonic Tangle and Whisper issue 1 or 2? Probably 1. So that'll be pretty cool. So the general issue of the lack of complexity has been solved. So let's break down all types of characters, in my opinion. It's not actually stated by the game, it's just sort of the feel I have when I was playing through the game. We got the symbol characters. These cards have simple stat buffs and barely any setup. These cards are simple to use as they can be used for random, powerful attacks like Marine, Amy, Bug, and also Big. But you don't need to wait a few things. You can just literally throw them out, attack, and they'll just do the job. There's also a Flicky too that sort of does this, and this character is really broken. Depending on if you pair him up with Pachacamac, because you can have an attack, and then Pachacamac buffs like the Flicky, and then he attacks again. So Pachacamac buffs the Flicky, and then the Flicky attacks, and then Pachacamac buffs him again until the Flicky can no longer attack, since there's a limit on how many times the Flicky can return to the lane. Oh my god, this Flicky will actually be unironically the strongest character in the game. Right now, I say he's the best one-cost card in the entire game by far, because wow, using that ability paired with Pachacamac, crazy. Because Pachacamac buffs the entire rotation plus by 2 at the end of every turn, so that guy is very broken. And Pachacamac is, well, a support character. Cards that are sort of made to support, always by buffing their attack and health. These cards are made to help out the team from a powerful assault that can make the difference in the match. Pretty much, cards like Pachacamac, Wave and Ray, those are the kind of characters that could give enough buff to literally win the entire game. IMCs. Pachacamac especially, he is probably one of the most broken supports out there. Even Dr. Fukuoka, he's not as good as Pachacamac, honestly, because Pachacamac gives constant stat buffs. So again, these characters are sort of made to, they're not really attack, they're just made to be here to exist in order to help out the other characters. So the setup here is to place a character as early as you can. Especially for Pachacamac, you need to place him as early as you can. Wave and Ray, not really, because the buffs isn't continuous, but Pachacamac's buff are continuous, so you need to put him at the very beginning of the match, and you sort of need to not have the character attack, and you just need to wait. For Wave, not really, you could straight up just set 3 other characters that have Wave being behind, but for Pachacamac, you pretty much need to put him on the first, it's one of the first cards you can, if you can, turn 3 minimum, since he's a 3-cost card. You put him there, and then he will just constantly buff characters, and yeah, that could win the match. So unfortunately though, at this point in the game, you can't just sit around and attack at the very end. It doesn't really work like that. But for a really strong character, for characters that already got buffs to begin with, or with characters like Flicky, you can do some insane damage. There are also this sort of characters. Cards who are made to delay or forward the enemy's assaults. It can be done by card removal, debuffs, freeze. Such cards are the Heavy Shinobi, Chaos, and Clean. These characters are pretty much the types of characters that you will use to just destroy the strategy. Whatever strategy the enemy had, you will just sort of delay the strategy or even ruin it by just sort of moving it around or even delaying their attack turn. For example, Heavy Shinobi can freeze a random lane, which can be a very decisive strike if you freeze a lane you're about to use for attack. And so, after you freeze a lane, you could straight up attack, get a free turn of attack, which could guarantee the victory, or you can also get a free turn to sort of give you more time to prepare whatever strategy you have, so you can attack and be more prepared for whatever the enemy has in store. So that's the cool thing about Heavy Shinobi, which is kind of why, this character is not perfect, though, since it's a random lane, so you can straight up freeze the lane you don't want, and that really sucks. For the case of Chaos, you remove the character, and depending on how many stars you have, can also apply the debuff, which I think is also really powerful. Especially if the enemy doesn't have them, it's 1, 2 cards, you just have Chaos, and if you have 2 cards, it just heavily delays the strategy, because one of the 2 cards were pretty important, and if they have only 1 card, then you pretty much render whatever thing they were going, whatever strategy they had going, is just they're just back to square one. And Cream is is also really helpful since she can reduce a random character stat to 1, and that's really cracked. Depending on what kind of character you have. If it's Sonic, crazy. Because Sonic is like a very high stat. He's a simple character. You just sort of game it out there and he just boom. The cool thing about him is that he there's a limit to when he's pulled, like when you can sort of drop him. He's not one of these characters that you will never get. He's a character that you will always get up to a certain point. You can get him before, but there's a certain point where you will have him, so that's always pretty cool. And finally, complex characters. Those cards have maximum potential that is actually pretty conditional. If you just throw it out there, the card may be mediocre or bad. But under its own conditions, it can be great. So those cards include Supersonic, Blaze, and Metal Sonic. The thing with all these cards is that these are characters where if you just sort of throw them out, they can be pretty bad. Like Supersonic, if you just have him alone, he just sucks. Blaze, if you just sort of have her, she's fine. And Metal Sonic, for a 6-card card, he kinda sucks. You just sort of have him out there. So the good thing with these characters is that for Supersonic, if you're able to wait up, if you're able to set up all of the other characters, if you're able to sacrifice all the, if you're able to sacrifice, like, occasional damage, if you're able to sacrifice the fact that the enemy will just attack you constantly and are able to gather 7 cards of Supersonic to come in and just end the game, then you're good. For case of Blaze, you can activate an unavailability, all the unavailabilities throughout both lanes. So what's really interesting about Blaze is that if you got multiple characters that have an unavailability, she can pretty much activate them again. And if you got guys like Airman, Chaos, maybe a Heavy Shinobi, or like Dr. Fukuroko, like all these characters, if you're able to have them at the same time and Blaze just does their shit, mayhem, like absolute mayhem. Like anyone will move a card somewhere and they apply a debuff. Chaos will be moving cards. Dr. Fukuroka will be giving buffs. Heavy Shinobi will be sweeping lanes. Like there will be, like, depending on how it's done, Blaze could be an absolute like. And finally, we got lane characters. Characters that uses lanes to become better. Like Charming, for example, who gains attack per card on the lane. I mean, there's not a lot of these characters. I would say Wave 2 is sort of on that category of lane character. And technically Metal Sonic. So there's not a lot of these characters that uses like specifically lanes to become stronger. Chip, though, he's one of those characters because if you have him first on the lane, he will get a 5 more attack, which is, pretty insane. But with this metric, it shows the game complexity as there have been multiple matches where I was outsmarted by the enemy's card abilities and strategies. Furthermore, it allows multiple possibilities to form a team. For example, there can be one centered to be aggressive, as both King Boom Boom and Metal Sonic get buffs when others dash. So in this case, you pretty much attack constantly with things to characters like Tikal, like the Flicky, Big. You simply attack so that you get a Metal Sonic out there like turn 7 or turn 8 and he just destroys everything. And King Boom Boo gets buffed when characters are like defeated. So King Boom Boo is even more broken. So yeah. Okay, now this is like 2 games I can't really speak loud here, but I have seen something very interesting about Sonic Blitz that I do want to say. For example, metas. Well, the meta has sort of shifted. At the beginning, it was kind of the Supersonic meta, where basically just don't use your card, use Supersonic, and like turn 7 and 8, and you would just be guaranteed to win. Nowadays, it's not possible because lots of characters hit truly hard. And now I feel like we're sort of towards a meta that seems more towards Metal Sonic, because I've seen multiple matches where I just got ended because Metal Sonic just did his thing for like 19 damage. So I'm pretty sure he's probably the best character in the game, since you don't actually need to like non-attack for him to become absolutely cracked. You need to pretty much just constantly attack. So I'm guessing that a team of Metal Sonic is probably the strongest team in the game. But there are other may counter or not really survive against this meta. For example, I made like a low-cost team, which was mostly made of characters with very low cost. And what I found interesting is that, unlike other teams, where you could do literally nothing in some turns, or you can only draw a card per turn. In this team, we would often even run out of cards in your deck, because you would constantly, like, you would be able to, like, use, like, 2 to 3 cards, like, every turn. Because from, like, 5 to, like, 4 energy, you have the option to, like, use, like, plenty of 1-cost cards, 2-cost cards, 3-cost cards. And the really cool thing about like the low-cost team, basically what made it really interesting is like if you can, depending on whatever, like on how you can combine the team is pretty strong because you can very much set up any character pretty easily because you don't need a lot of energy. So you can very much quickly form a strategy in order to fight against the enemy. So that is an aspect that I find pretty interesting. Meta-wise, I feel like the game now is shifting towards something a lot more aggressive because I find a lot more matches where me and the enemy were sort of constantly attacking each other and I would either win or they would either win. So I feel like now we're sort of going for something more aggressive in this game where you're not really trying to skip turns to like wait up in order to form my competitive strategy. Sometimes there will be times where we'll need to pretty much just throw characters out, so basically making more like short-term strategy, which makes characters like Takal even stronger because they can reduce energy, and makes characters like Tachkamaka much weaker since you need to throw them out quickly. So his biggest flaw in the team has been very much weakened. But characters like Metal Sonic, Storm, and like very much this sort of characters have become even stronger now because since the enemy also needs to sort of come up with like quick strategies, then these kinds of characters can easily throw off whatever plan the enemies had, and that can very much give you the victory in some cases. So right now I feel like the meta in this game is pretty interesting. Sure, it's like the beginning of the game, and the game hasn't released yet, but meta-wise I can probably say that we were in the Super Sonic meta from the beginning of the technical test all the way up to the Metal Sonic release, where I feel like now we're in a Metal Sonic meta. That's how I would sort of describe the whole meta environment, which is weird because I don't think there's like no online matches, so I've been fighting against bots like pretty much every time. Then I think the last thing that I did want to add, the feeling of power creep. I feel like the game is sort of going for like a lower of a power creep with Metal Sonic. Metal Sonic, he's like Super Sonic, which is way easier to use. And considering how we got very strong units like King Boom Booming around, it's not the most viable strategy. And that by doing so, you could be very much, that's a very long-term strategy because things may not really turn out the way you want it. It's very much based on the randomness. So what I found really interesting about Metal Sonic is that he gets buffs. He gets stronger every time, like you can run through dash. So he's like Super Sonic because at the very end of the match, you will use him and he'll just finish the job. But unlike Super Sonic, there's no sacrifices. Sure, sacrifice would be long-term strategy, I guess. Considering how the meta is sort of going for something more aggressive. So again, I haven't really facing off against online players yet, so I'm not sure if it's really like, if I can really judge like the environment of the game, if I can really face up against real players. At least I think I don't face up against real players. Sometimes maybe, since I ran matches where the enemy took a long time to sort of like decide which card they were using, but the profile names, they don't feel like, or they don't look like real players, so I'm not sure. Plus they always have like cosmetics that I just straight up don't have, so I'm pretty sure those are all bots. In short, the game is fun as it allows more creativity as you can build decks centered around a certain playstyle, and it succeeds to be a rather simple but multi-layered card game. But what makes this game amazing is the large roster filled of deep cuts. Like, you had characters from the classic era all the way to like Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog. You got classic, modern, they're all with 3D models, so this game will be first for many Sonic characters that lacks a 3D model, like the Conductor from the Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog, Dr. Fukurokov, King Bimbo has a 3D model. That's actually pretty well made, so I don't know. But there's a lot of like characters that don't really have 3D models, where it will be like the first time. Especially like if the RG post-reboot characters are coming to the game, like Spike the Porcupine might get his own 3D model. And that'll definitely be the fun parts for any fun. Like unboxing card packs to unlock various characters across Sonic multimedia. Because if the leaks are real, then you can straight up just summon in the game, and you will not because you got the best character in the game, or because you got Sally Acorn in 2025. This is the kind of things I really want to see in this game. This was my little review. Actually, no, not little, because it's 21 minutes long. I did not expect this to be that long, but hey, so that happens when you yap on too much. So this was my review of Sonic Blitz. Nothing too in depth, but nothing really shallow. I'm looking forward to Sonic Blitz's future updates and maybe the international release on like another Sonic game. Like, come on. Wake up! And I'm not going to yap onto the game too much, because if I was yapping on the game, I'll be here for at least 20 more minutes. So yeah, goodbye.